Welcome to the Property Corner with myself, Rowan Alexander. Welcome back. On today's episode, we're going to be looking at buying property in South Africa, whether you're an expat living abroad or a foreign resident looking to invest in South Africa. So recently, there's been some reports about a higher number of expats returning to South Africa than usual. We haven't necessarily seen this in our business, but what we have seen is a big inquiry into expats actually wanting to acquire property in South Africa. So while they're working abroad, whether it be temporarily or permanently, looking to invest in property in South Africa. There's a number of aspects to this, sort of the legal requirements when doing that, the best methods to do that. But then also looking at today, I want to look at how the finance application would work in such an instance. There's a lot of queries we get about this and how the banks view them. And this landscape also changes quite a lot. So I thought it would be good just to chat through those and maybe make sense of them so that when we then do update, you've got some perspective of how to go about this. So the first category we'll deal with, and I think it's the easiest one, so we'll get that out the way, and that's foreigners wanting to buy in South Africa. As a foreigner, if you would like to invest in property in South Africa, you require a 50% deposit. That is because South African banks will only lend 50% of the value of the property to foreign residents. In addition to this, they will only look at salaried employees. So if you are a foreign resident with your own business, unfortunately, you cannot apply for finance in South Africa. As a salaried applicant, you would need to prove 6 months worth of income. So that would mean 6 months bank statements showing deposits of your salary into that account, accompanied by 6 months worth of payslips. And then when looking at this application, the banks will actually convert the income and expenses to rand values. So even if you're a foreigner living in Europe, earning either pounds or euros, all of your income and expenses will be converted to rands for the exercise of the application. You'll also need to prove that the 50% deposit that's required, you actually have valid, or you have at your disposal and can be used towards the transaction. You'll need a valid passport, and then your normal procedures for application would apply. There's nothing funny. So really, the only requirements are that you are a salaried employee and that you have proof of the 50% deposit. Those would be the two major changes that we see in addition to your normal bond applications. Bear in mind that deposit that needs to be transferred to South Africa will be subject to normal exchange controls. So there's various ways that you can do this. Your bank can assist you with that, or there's different currency or exchange partners that you could approach to actually help you transfer that money to South Africa. This would be applicable whether you are a foreigner living in South Africa or a foreigner living abroad and only simply wanting to invest in property in South Africa. The second segment, and this is probably where we're getting our most inquiries, is for South African citizens working abroad. Whether you are a contract worker or permanently employed abroad, you do have the opportunity to apply for finance in South Africa. Your loan to value that you could achieve is anything between 70% and 100%, depending upon the bank's criteria and your circumstances. This is where a bond originator would come in and assist you with actually determining what sort of loan to value you could qualify for and what rand value mortgage bond you could apply for. Requirements for such an application would be proof of income for 6 months. In the same way, you would need to provide, as foreigners, you would need to provide 6 months worth of bank statements and 6 months worth of payslips. Then, as with foreigners, all your calculations will be converted to rand, and then the application will be handled in rands, as well as the proof of deposit needs to be provided. So if you are going to be providing a deposit, that you'll need to provide proof. And if that money is transferred to South Africa, it will be subject to the normal exchange controls. So the big difference we're seeing here between foreigners and South Africans living abroad is that as a foreigner, you can only qualify for a 50% loan. Whereas as an expat, South African living abroad, you could get a bond of 70 to 100%. Then looking at whether you are full-time employed or a contract worker. If you are full-time employed, there's no additional requirements, for you to submit any proof of contracts and things like that. But if you are a contract worker, you need to ensure that your contract is at least valid for another 3 months. If you're going to be applying for the bond within the last 3 months of your contract, your employer will need to provide you with a letter stating that your employment will continue beyond the 3 months. So you need some form of renewal letter or some sort of proof that you're going to be earning income, sort of 3 months and beyond. Otherwise, the banks can't take that income into account because they have no security that you will actually be earning that income. I know a lot of people that are working abroad are on some form of contract, and as long as you have more than 3 months left on that contract, you can apply for mortgage finance. In addition to this, you would also need copies of your visas or work permits, you need a valid passport, and also some form of South African identification. The only thing that cannot be considered is self-employed clients. So the same way that foreigners who are self-employed cannot purchase property in South Africa through the finance method, the same way expats living abroad cannot apply for finance if they own more than 25% of the company for which they work. So if you are a partner in some form of business, or you're a sole owner and your shareholding is more than 25%, unfortunately, you cannot apply for finance from our traditional banks in South Africa. I hope this shed some light on the possibilities of financing a purchase in South Africa. I'd encourage you to make use of this while you are an expat abroad if you are planning on coming back to South Africa, because you could have a huge head start by applying for that finance, getting the property registered while you have cash available to do these things. As you can see, the process is not that complex. It's actually a lot simpler than what people would think. The burden of proof is just simply there ensuring that you are legally out of the country and legally able to work and be in employment in the country where you are, and then proving that the income that you are declaring on your application is actually being earned. That would be the most important things, and that would be the simplicity of the application. Whether you qualify for 70, 80, 90, or 100% of that mortgage value of the property value, that will be determined by your risk rating, the value of the property that you purchase. And there's a number of permutations that then will be taken into account to actually give you that value. So that's why we encourage you to get in contact with us. We can put you in contact with our mortgage originator who can assist you in understanding how much you qualify for, and then looking at the deposit that you're sitting with and sort of that combined value that you could then purchase for. In addition to that, I think we'll discuss how you actually go about transferring those funds from abroad to South Africa in one of our next episodes, where we'll actually bring in someone from outside who's an expert and only deals with that. There's a lot of these companies that offer that currency exchange service where they assist you with the legal processes of bringing large sums of money from abroad into South Africa, especially when it's got to do with the purchasing of property. We've done this and facilitated these transactions a number of times. I myself have family members and friends who temporarily moved to different countries to work abroad, purchased property, and once they had come back to South Africa, they found that property, they had managed to knock off a huge amount of that debt. They had tenants in them while they were abroad, and they could come back with a strong head start in life. So I'd encourage you, if you're thinking about this, if you're wanting to do this and your plan is to come back to South Africa, make sure that you get into that property cycle as quickly as possible. Time is on your side. The longer you have to actually pay off that bond, the longer you have to stick a tenant in it, the better circumstances you're going to be able to come back to. So in some of our future episodes, we're going to be looking at how you actually go about this process practically. You're sitting abroad, you don't necessarily have any connection to a particular project or people in South Africa, how you would go about doing that responsibly. And then also that process of actually transferring the funds that you need to South Africa. So that will be 2 future episodes that we'll be covering. If you're enjoying this, subscribe to our channel and look out for our future episodes.